So here we go. Okay, welcome to the Morgan Conservatory. Thank you so much for being here today. We have two artist talks from our artists in residence, Melissa Jean Harvey and Roberto Torres Mata. Our Artists in Residence program is funded by the Wingate Foundation, so thank you for that support. And I'd like to introduce our first artist speaking today. Actually, I'll introduce them both, and then, we'll go from there. So Melissa Jean Harvey is a contemporary artist and conservation technician born in rural Australia in 1974, now residing in Sydney. MJ has a Bachelor of Visual Arts Printmaking from Southern Cross University, a Master of Visual Arts, Sydney College of Arts in 2017. MJ's artist practice is inspired by place and the textural surroundings of their immediate environment. The medium MJ predominantly uses is recycled cotton clothing and domestic cloth donated from her local area. Melissa's recent highlights are delivering her thesis, Pulping Spaces at Impact 10 Printmaking Symposium in Salamander, Spain, later published in Imprint Magazine, Australia. Guest artist at Queensland College of Art and Design, Griffith University, where she further developed her technique in pulp printing. MJ is continuously learning about new processes, and in the future will be combining the technique of pulp printing and pulp spraying to create a new body of work and continuing to branch out to other papermaking communities around the world. I will also introduce Roberto Torres Mata. Roberto Torres Mata is a first-generation artist from Huntington Beach, California, and Rockford, Illinois, currently active in Madison, Wisconsin. He explores the complexities of migration from human and animal movements by using multimedia to understand and analyze the issues of migration at the border. Roberto earned his Master's of Arts and Master's of Fine Arts in Printmaking at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and has earned his bachelor's degree in graphic design from Western Illinois University. He has exhibited his work nationally and internationally. His work was exhibited at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Figge Art Museum, the Chazen Museum of Art, and the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. His work is collected by universities and private collectors. Roberto was also a recipient of the Creative Arts Award and Education Graduate Research Scholarship Fellowship, and a recipient of the Russell and Paula Panchenko Chazen Prize. Please join me in welcoming our first artist, but both of our artists, Melissa Jean Harvey.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for coming here in person and online. Well, thanks for the introduction, Nicole. I feel like, yes, that what I'm about to say is probably repeated, but bear with me. So during this artist talk, I'm just going to introduce a few installations that I've done in the past, and then I'm going to lead into the Morgan and my experience here and what I've created while I've been here. So if anyone online wants to, or here wants to dig deeper into my practice, just there's an Instagram and my website. So just help yourself, and I've got any questions, you can just email me. Okay, so I've been a practicing artist for the last 20 years, presently based in Sydney, Australia, as mentioned before. I predominantly work with reused and recycled cotton clothing and domestic cloth, beaten to pulp to the medium I use. I spray site-specific and performative installations, and I make small and large-scale paper-like works, sculptures, pulp prints with the medium. I create work about my tactile experience of the world, internally and externally, that presently surround me. So here, the first image that you can see. This is a duration work. I did this at the university that I went to, OCU in Sydney, and it took 3 weeks to build this wall. It's all made out of recycled cotton clothing, pulped down. And so with that, you kind of need to layer, and if you overpower the wall with too much pulp and too much water, it kind of runs off. You can kind of see where it happens a little bit in this image. So every morning I'd be there before all the uni students arrived, and I would be using the shadows that were reflected by the architecture in the building to build this work. So this work, you probably saw this on the invite. So this is called A Dwelling on the Past. So it's made by appliquing pulp onto a silk screen, the greeny colors that you see, and then spraying it with a white background. So the smooth surface is at the front, and then the undulating texture is at the back, and you can't see it in this work. This work was based on the wallpaper that was in my childhood home in the kitchen. This is another work made on a similar screen. Similar process. It's like stenciling the letters, appliquing the black text, and then multi-layering different whites and blacks to kind of get that texture that you're seeing. This is called An Intimate Distance, and it is based on a book, feminist artist book I was reading at the time, and I was traveling through Europe. So this is part of my master's work, and I really wanted to have this experience of being in a space, loaded up with my sprayer, and to spray in an internal gallery space. It's quite industrial space, but at the same time, it had these beautiful white walls. And so the screens that you're seeing were sprayed in my studio, like a flat red and then a flat white. And I brought them in and lent them against the wall. And then I brought my compressor and all my pulp. And again, it was a kind of a duration performance work. It took 3 days to kind of get the deeper color of this. But I really wanted to have that experience, what it was like to spread my arms and really go for it. This is another work called Dark Matter. These works were sprayed on a silk screen as well. And also, I really wanted to have that experience of what the spray gun can do. So with these, I'd sprayed a background on the silk screen flat and almost let them dry. So the undulating back of the work was like peaks. So when you sprayed the spray, it kind of almost bounced back. So I kind of got this reverberation from the wet pulp to the dry pulp. And when you walk around the works, they're really three-dimensional. And what looks like something one way is totally different to the other way. And this is a side view of the work. So I made a couple of these works that weren't successful for the dark matter work, and so therefore I used it to make this work. I wanted to make a sculptural piece that looked almost human-like, where it kind of slid down the wall and slumped. So I kind of re-wet it, scrunched it in places. I used something that we call like core flute in Australia. I think you have an equivalent here. And so I was really kind of pushing it. And yeah, I haven't named this work. And it only lived for this installation. After that, it turned back into pulp and came another work. So this image isn't so great. Anyway, this is called Street Pulp. It is, sorry, this image isn't so high res, but if you see it, high res, there's like a total layering of different colored pulp medium. And I have this wall that around for me that graffiti artists use all the time, and it's totally layered. Sometimes it's layered so much that chunks of paint fall off and they're all beautifully layered. And so I wanted to make something that incorporated the overspray that you see on brick walls and surfaces of graffiti artists. And this work was made at the residency I did last year at Queensland College of Arts. This is a mixture of sprayed and pulp printed and impressed. So if you couch a really thick couch, I should say, a really thick piece of paper, and you impress in it and make it embossing, and if you spray it from one angle and then you press it, you get this really photographic look. And this work was inspired by the river that was near the studio and my walk from the studio to my accommodation every day. And also with the items that were in the studio. I mean, any paper maker knows that you've got cement and you've got water and you've got light. And so this is kind of that reflective kind of idea of water sitting on surfaces, and also incorporating the drain of the studio. Yeah. So from here, I'm going to take a sip of water. We're at the Morgan Conservatorium, Cleveland, Ohio. I had no idea what Cleveland, Ohio was going to be like when I arrived. And it's a very spread out city. And so for me, I often walk and absorb things by my journey. And then it's a real car city. So I was kind of here. I didn't really know what I was going to make. And so I knew why I was here, because I came here to unpack pigments and pulp pigments and how to use them, how to mix the pulp and the cotton linter and the alchemy of putting the retention agent in. And so I was kind of confronted by this new medium, and here I was, not really inspired yet by my environment, a new medium and white sheets of paper that were already formed in, like, I was making cotton paper and abaca, and normally I layer to make the paper, so it's like a sculptural journey. So by the time the image is formed, I've spent a lot of time with it. But in this making, there it was, this white sheet of paper, and then I had to build the image on the paper. And it really stifled me for a little bit. I was quite, so in that, when you're struggling and sitting in that uncomfortable space as artists that we often do, I pulled in something I was working on back in Australia before I came here. And it was this dream I had of these guardians, and they were super tall and really strong and present. And so I was journaling these guardians, and then I was kind of playing with them. And so I've got a whole book of them. And so I ran home and got my partner to take a picture of them to send to me, because I didn't bring them, because I thought, oh, I'll deal with that when I come back. But then I was like, maybe now I unpack them. Maybe this is the time. So I started stenciling these guardians onto the abaca sheets that I had made, and doing kind of the positive and the negative to kind of get an idea and a feel of how the spray gun here and the pulp was going to work. And so you can see I've got a little bit of bleeding here, but I was pretty impressed with those thin legs. And then I kind of got a bit more comfortable, even though I still, and probably won't for a long time, master the combination so the pigment doesn't bleed. But what I did accept is that sometimes when the pigment bleeds, you can actually get some really interesting image results. And so here, I also found the mats, the water mats that they have here in the studio, and started using them as background noise and stencils, and I really quite enjoyed that. So again, I branched out into color and was super disappointed when I pulled one of the stencils off and the blue would run into the red. And then I went, actually, you know what? I really like this. So I'm going to work with it. And then I'm just multi-laying, spraying, building up color layers and moving the stencils around. And then I actually achieved non-bleed in this, which I was very impressed with. So before I came here, this is my first time in the USA, but before I came to Cleveland, I spent 2 weeks in New York City. And these are graffiti works that I saw on a wall there that I often take photos of textures and wall surfaces. And so I was looking back through my phone, kind of going, and thinking about the stenciling process of the graffiti artist. And so I started introducing that idea of spraying different angles and moving it and moving it and moving it and layering and getting more of a concept of what it's like to layer an image instead of doing it in the reverse. And so here at the Morgan, there is a really beautiful garden out the back for anyone that doesn't know the Morgan. And it's full of plants that they use to make different types of paper with. It also has this massive warehouse at the back, and all of you are probably very aware of the water tower, but in New York City, they're everywhere. They're just sitting, and you just got to wonder how the hell they get up there. And also, I would just look at them and then I would start thinking about them like moving and jumping from one roof to the other. And so I was having my lunch out in the garden and I saw that again and I went, wow, imagine if it was this really elegant, long structure that started walking along. And in that, I started going, oh, maybe these are my USA guardians. So then I started working with that and bringing that into, and by then, instead of feeling so uncomfortable, I was starting to feel like a bit more playful. So my USA guardian met my Aussie guardian, and here I was also starting to do things like spray the work and the stencil, and then flip the stencil and use the leftover pulp to kind of, in the yellow work, to create this noise and this movement. And I really liked that. And this is a wall that is at the Lake View Cemetery, correct? And there's this tomb of an ex-president who was killed here in Cleveland in the 1800s, and he was assassinated, and the walls are leaking. They're like leaking salt, and so the surfaces and the paint starting to kind of fall off. And you know, I really liked that. So in that, and also I noticed that the bricks were, there's no formula to the building of this bricks. It seems really random. And I found that interesting. So I thought, in the uncomfortable, you want to be camouflaged. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe these guardians need to blend into the landscape. And so I was playing around with that idea. And my last day here, I just kind of went, I'm just going to scrumple these paper up wet, and I'm going to spray it from one side and spray it from the other side. I'm going to really create some crazy colorful background. I'm not going to worry about bleeding or anything. And then I stenciled over the top, and I was like, made my own graffiti wall. And that's kind of where I finished. So super looking forward to going back to Oz and bringing this and the experience of here to my practice and to see where it takes us. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Hey, good day. I want to thank Morgan, everybody, for the support of just spreading out and just making a mess and just doing my thing. So coming from Madison, Wisconsin, I want to thank Jim Escalante, who is a retired professor who introduced me to this process of making paper out of corn husk. Which was a magical experience during my grad experience there at UW-Madison. So when I first got here, I had only had a week to prepare for everything before just jumping into the making of the process of the paper and all this crazy ideas that I had. So this is kind of a list of everything that I had, not including other things that just came into mind. And I was talking to my mom about, it's like, hey, you want to share recipes? And here's an idea. It's like, and then my mom was involved in the process of kind of like contributing to this project because she influenced me so much. And growing up, it's like she was the main cook, all these ingredients, and just like that influenced me in the process of this afterwards. On top of that, it was something that was aromatic, had structure, had texture. You can feel it. It had an identity, and it all stems from my cultural background from Mexico as a first generation. So I brought all these ingredients from Wisconsin. So I was like, all right, let's see what I'm gonna do. Because at first, my initial first session of like back in grad school was experimenting with chili peppers and see how that turns out. And I was just curious, and it kind of stopped abruptly at one point, and it just kept back of my head. It was like, what if? What if I could have done that? So yeah. And to start with, I had 6 pounds of corn husk, cooked them with soda ash, boiled them up, prepared them in two giant big pots. Had sea salt, which is like a fiber from agave that is an after product from the extraction of the sugar and distillation for like tequilas. And it's also used for burlap as well. And on the right picture is all the pieces of wood that I used. Initially, I was going to have it laser cut at UW-Madison, but the cutter was not working, so I jigsaw the whole 3 boards by hand and then polyurethane with the help of Tom. So afterwards, it was in the process of cutting all the stencils, having all the pieces made. I was removing the seeds off the chili peppers, all the dried chili peppers. I had pasilla, chile de árbol, uh, 6 different kinds of chilies at least. At one point, I forgot to wear gloves, so I recommend wearing gloves if you're not used to it. At one point, I just stopped feeling it. So when you're handling with corn husk fibers, it kind of has like pricks your hand a little bit because it's like a very sturdy fiber. So with the beater, we made it was like less than 20 minutes, a really fine fiber. So it was like very manageable. And I sometimes mix it with cotton or flax. So that was gave it structure, gave it a body. In the third picture, I had these mold and decal boxes, the circles from Tom when I was visiting his studio. And I was like, Tom, can I borrow these? And I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. And I was like, all right. And I just went wild on it and just started working on this. It's kind of an afterthought. I was making these tortillas and also in relationship with like the corn itself. You know, it was something different, something that was like exploring this avenue of ideas, and also like using turmeric and chili powder to create these like stencils of people and birds in relationship to migration and how we go from one place to another. And the fourth is the first casting using the vacuum system to create the pieces that I made. And this is with a combination of some dark chili peppers powder and hibiscus flowers. So most of all the ingredients and colors are from natural pigments. So I wasn't using any synthetics. It was all natural and controlled in a manner that it either bled through in the way that I let it do its thing without control or controlling it in certain ways. So this is the second one, using the blocks. Now for the vacuum system, you add the pulp, bleached cotton onto the plexi container with the wood pieces on the bottom with the felt and Pellon. And so I was building, layering the cotton, and then I add the hibiscus flowers on it and the chili peppers. So all of that information gets retained through the suction of the water. So the plastic is on the surface, and I control and observe and how the water is being moved. And with this one, the hibiscus flowers kind of went center, as you can see. So he made a beautiful kind of articulation of the movement of the dye itself from the hibiscus flowers into the center. And afterwards, obviously don't have control of what happens afterwards. The colors change exposed to the oxygen, right? It kind of oxidizes after a while. So, and so the boxes were perfect. The squares were perfect because on top of everything else with the ingredients and the forms, it reminded me of my experience of Oaxaca when I was there for 3 months. And there's a lot of textiles there, and a lot of them were square and a lot of designs on them, sort of like ponchos or huipiles. So they have the neck. So each one you're gonna see it has like a neck. And it's to me, it was like a canvas of opportunity to create or formulate design specifically with the ingredients that I have. So this is kind of the before process of that. So all the suction, all the water is being drained out, and I would have like 3 more on top of that. So I was just jumping from one box to another just to prepare because the waiting time, you have to kind of estimate the waiting time for this takes about 2 days at least. And then you got to add the fan on top of that. So I was all over the place just trying to get an idea of what I want them to look like. The second image is after the tortillas were dried. So the left one is a combination of corn husk with flax, and the second one is cotton on top of corn fibers on top of it, so they're sandwiched and it's stable, so it gives it like a foundation for stability on top of the stencil with it. So these are the other two, and this is after I was talking to my mom. She was saying, How about you use some charcoal or spirulina or pumpkin powder? So I was using some of those in combination with the designs. And the left one with the black charcoal, the sides were initially going to be hibiscus, but I mixed it with beet powder. And somehow it changed into this rusty, earthy look to it. And you have the opportunity to look at outside. I also add a layer of cheesecloth on top of it, so you can see the weaving of the threads on top of the cotton. So it did give it that textile look that I was going after. So that was just kind of it brings me back to my experience in Oaxaca because I've worked with some textile artisans there, and it's time for me to contribute back in some form of like, how can I create this through paper? So I was using that, and it's every hour or every day, it just changes. You don't have control over it. And it makes me like wonder about how things turn out. Like some recipes turn out differently in the way you cook. Um, so I embedded some chilies within the copper itself. As you can see on the second one, the chile de árbol are the lines itself, and I use the stencils to show the birds as the flow goes north. An indication of migration as well. But I like how the cotton kind of shrinks and it grabs onto the peppers itself. Here's another two. And the left one is a combination of three types of chilies and top of the chile negro on the neck area. And the light green is a mixture of, I think it was spearmint and viscous. And on the sides is beet powder. And then the second one is spirulina, and then charcoal with corn husk, sisal, and chili powder and hibiscus. So I was experimenting with the second one outside because I know for a fact that if you expose like natural pigments to the sun, it will bleach, like it will fade. Uh, so for these works, you're gonna have to keep them inside, or at least coat them with like a UV protectant seal, at least, or a UV protected case as well, so you can protect it. So it also kind of changed the color a bit into this sandy, earthy red. So some of these colors are unpredictable. You never know what you're gonna get. So this is a series of three. Now, this is all flax with corn husk embedded with cheesecloth. Currently, these are not finished yet. In the cheesecloth, I'm gonna make fringe. I'm gonna design them and knot them at the end. So on the top and bottom, they're gonna look like kind of like rugs in a sense. Because there's just something beautiful about knots that you can just create and design in itself. So the left one is a combination of chilies dried, embedded with the flax, wrapped in cheesecloth, chili powder, and stenciled. And I let them air dry so I have the texture rise up instead of squished down, because I really love how they just pop up in a more sculptural form. The second one is all hibiscus mixed with cheesecloth and a little stencil at the top, a little guy flying with a bird in the sky. And the third one is a stencil with turmeric and pumpkin powder. I love how yellow that turns out. And after they're completely dry, I use a brush and try to loose materials so they don't start, making a mess. You just try to recover what you can after you use it. And so this is some more paper that I made, more stack of tortillas. So I just got really out of hand with tortillas because it was just something so unique, and it just reminded me of like helping in the kitchen, just there's a practice, there's a ceremony involved. And for me, it's kind of like natural. It makes me feel like in a domestic space, basically. Um, so the other two, the left is like a rebozo, like a scarf, and it has a cheesecloth embedded in it. And the right one in the first image is copper wire mixed in with the cotton. And I used oregano, spearmint, hibiscus, chili powder to create these stencils in it. And the second one is, so all of this work that I've done was last week. It was in 5 days, which is crazy. But I felt once you get started, you just feel like you can't stop. You just keep going and going because one thing sparks into another idea, sparks into another idea. And now, currently, this is the last week of my residency. I started doing some letterpress yesterday, actually. So I was mixing type, font, because as I was a graphic designer and learned a lot about type, and that just brought me back to like the historical aspects of how we used to, use type in printmaking. Formerly, I teach printmaking, and so this brings me back. And then also on top of that, using the paper that I made with the chili peppers and the colors and the smells and aromas mixed with the oils, it just completely makes it more complex in that sense. It just adds more another layer of identity or just the idea of that, right? Um, and I still want to do more. I have a couple pictures. Actually, this is probably the last one, but I have another big sheet. You're welcome to see that's not in the presentation. That just finished drying too. So it's about one of those like a whole table size basically. So yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it for coming.